I wanted to share with you, U.S. companies' cash pile hits $1.7 trillion. This was in the Financial Times. This is actually a story from last week. I printed it out, and I've been meaning every day to get to it. Haven't. I mean, there's been, a bunch of other things that have been coming on, but I don't want this to go away. And so I want to talk about it today because I think that this is actually a critical story. That $1.7 trillion is a mind-boggling amount of money. I mean, an absolutely mind-boggling amount of money. And this is the article, Eric Platt, New York, writing for the Financial Times on May 20th. The article titled, U.S. Companies' Cash Pile Hits $1.7 Trillion. 5 U.S. tech giants are hoarding more than $500 billion, a record sum. Cash has become increasingly concentrated in a handful of groups. Apple, Microsoft, Alphabet, which is Google, Cisco, and Oracle have amassed $504 billion in cash by the end of last year, 2015. Nearly a third of the total $1.7 trillion held on the balance sheets of U.S. non-financial companies. Now, this is ignoring the banksters and the trillions of dollars that they have. The top 50 holders accounted for $1.1 trillion of that amount. And then he writes, the ever-increasing amount of cash also highlights how U.S. boardrooms are reticent to invest in their businesses, choosing instead to increase dividends. Expenditures on things like new equipment slipped 3% last year. So he quotes Jack Albin with the BMO Private Bank. He says, companies are hoarding cash. And that's what's going on. And when you look at, the companies, who are the companies? Well, Apple is sitting on over $200 billion in cash. Microsoft is sitting on over $100 billion in cash. Alphabet, what you probably know of as Google, is sitting on over $70 billion in cash. Cisco, $60 billion. Oracle, around $50 billion. Pfizer, around $40 billion. Johnson & Johnson Company, around $40 billion. J&J. Amgen, Intel, Qualcomm, Merck, Gilead, Ford, Visa, GM, Coca-Cola, Amazon, Facebook, Medtronic, EMC, all of them sitting on, at least $10 billion, and some, up to and more than $20 or $30 billion. Why does this matter? Because it's money that's not being put to use in our economy. If tomorrow, President Obama, if Congress tomorrow, and it ain't going to happen because the Republicans, are so committed to small American government. They so hate American government. They want to, basically crush American. Well, to quote Grover Norquist, drown it in a bathtub. Shrink it to the size where you can drown it in a bathtub. This visceral hatred of American government by Republicans has had just absolutely tragic consequences. From, suppressing our economy, which is leading to broken families and marriages and suicides and spousal abuse and all kinds of god-awful things. From that whole collection of social problems and woes and ills to the inability. So if Congress, if we had a Democratic Congress and a Democratic president, and they appropriated $1.7 trillion, the amount of money that just, these companies are sitting on, doing nothing. They appropriated that amount of money and said, okay, let's rebuild our infrastructure. Let's do in the United States like South Korea did. Let's build a national high-speed, genuinely high-speed, fiber-based internet service for the entire country. That's not a radical or new idea, by the way. FDR did this with electricity, with the Rural Electrification Administration in the 1930s. He did this or Harry Truman, I think, did it. It might have been Dwight Eisenhower, I'm not sure. One of them created the Rural Telephony Administration, the RTA, which brought telephone service out to rural areas. Because the phone companies and the power companies did not want to run their power lines and phone lines out to areas that, where it was less profitable to serve people. So, why aren't we doing that with, for example, rebuilding our roads, our bridges, everything else? What that would do, that $1.7 trillion, it would put to work millions of Americans in good paying, high quality jobs that can't be shipped offshore. But no, we can't have that. We can't have that. So this is problematic. And the reason why they're stashing this money, in large part, is because they can. Right? It's tax avoidance at a certain level. But it's also because they can. And the because they can has to do with changes in the rules governing taxes, both individual and corporate, and the movement of money between countries that were largely made in the 1980s during the Reagan administration and amplified in the 1990s and the 2000s during the Clinton and Bush administration. This is not healthy. It might be, very healthy for Apple to be sitting on $200 billion, although I would question that. Why, if the shareholders now, for the shareholders, I'm not an Apple shareholder, but if somebody was an Apple shareholder, okay, there's two ways to look at this. The one is, I would love to see the company distribute that money as dividends, which is what many of these companies are doing, basically. So my Apple stock becomes worth more, and the dividends that I get are only taxable at a maximum 15 to 20%. And so it's more money for shareholders. But on the other hand, as a shareholder, I would say $200 billion. Why don't you develop the next iPhone, the next breakthrough, the next evolution? What's the next step for Apple as a company? Not to pick on Apple. I mean, you could say this of any of these companies. Now, of course, they're engaging in R&D and they're doing those kind of things, but we're talking serious money here. So, this is just a symptom, I think, in many ways, of how broken our economy has become as a consequence of tax policies and trade policies that favor giant transnational corporations and billionaires and not working people, and don't favor the best interests of the country as a whole. We used to, that used to be our filter. We used to ask ourselves, what's the best thing for America and Americans? And for the past 35 years, most of our legislators have been asking themselves, and most of our companies have been asking themselves, what can we do to help the rich get richer? And it's time to start changing the question. We'll be back.
To watch more clips from our programs, hit the Watch More Videos button over here. And please be sure to hit the handy-dandy subscribe button so you'll always be up to date. Tag, you're it.